Have a bright mind, but unsure where to shine? Look no further. ANHSCA is here to guide your path to success. Connect with exciting events, discover new opportunities and network with the pros. Unlock your full potential with ANHSCA, where your success story begins. Visit www.anhsca.com and let us be your compass on a journey towards success. Embrace the possibilities and let your brilliance shine with the ANHSCA.
Well, hey, good day, everyone. This is Mr. Al Height from ANHSCA. I hope everybody's having a great day today. We're doing our education symposium. And as you guys know how we do it here, those who have been following us, we love to do what we do because we love history and all the things that matter to us. Today, I have a great group of panelists with me today, and I'm going to introduce them here shortly. But today, our topic is history. Why is it important? And what can we learn from the success of the things of our history? What can we look back on to help us in the future? And so our panelist is going to address some of those things with us today. And I hope you have a great time with it. This will last about an hour's worth of time, our fourth education symposium, and we'll be doing more. So keep an eye on that. I want to thank our sponsors today, which is ANHSCA, of course, the American National High School Championship Association, ANHSCA.com. Want to thank the Gray Fox label, which is for great folks like myself. Just kidding, folks. A Gray Fox label, they have a great opportunity where you can get clothing line for folks who have grandkids and things of that nature. We also want to thank the West Michigan Music Group. They are a great company that put on festivals and things of that nature in the Midwest. And I also want to thank the All-American Corporation, which is the All-American Month. You guys ever heard of All-American Month? Wow, I want you to know about that. And we'll get a chance to speak a little bit more about some of our sponsors. But All-American Month is just that. It's about all Americans, what we do to make America great as well in the sense of all the things that we do. Every person is important. And we want to make sure that we acknowledge those people who make things that are here in the United States. It's hard to do that sometimes. Every clothing that you pick up is made from someplace else if you buy something, but it's great to buy some things that are in America. And so thank you, All American Month folks, for what you do as well. Well, ladies, without further ado, I want to bring on our panelists today onto the screen so that you guys get a chance to introduce them, have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about them. First, I'm going to bring on a good friend of mine by the name of Melinda McNeil. Melinda McNeil, I want to bring her on. Thank you, Melinda, for joining us today. Just wanted to say thank you. Any quick words before I bring on the next guest?
Hello, Al. I am honored to be here today. Thank you for inviting me. I'm passionate about education, so I'm excited to be here with you.
Outstanding. My next guest is Miss Catherine Knapp. Catherine Knapp, welcome to the stage as well. Thank you, folks. Catherine, you'd like to introduce a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me on here today, Mr. Al. I absolutely believe that history is very important. It shapes what things are, and our perception of history is important to how we go into the future. That's for sure.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much. Next on, I want to bring in Mr. Algish Williams. Algish?
Hey, good afternoon, Al. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. I'm excited to have this conversation to understand the importance of where we've been and how we could remove some of those challenges as we move forward into where we want to go.
Outstanding, Algish. Next, I'd like to bring on Damaris Robinsons. Damaris? Oh, don't forget to unmute your mic there, Damaris.
I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Thank you for having me on for another education symposium. I believe this is my third one. And I look forward to discussing the importance of history with all of you all.
All right, great, guys. So listen, we got a great panelist, as you guys can see out there. And this is being played all over the world. We are streaming all the way from LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it, YouTube. It's out there, so you'll be able to find this. Those who are listening to us live right now, thank you so much for joining in on us. You'll be able to send us some emails and comments, and we'll make sure that all our panelists, that you get information on them as well, so that you can reach out to them and learn a little bit more about them as well. And we just wanted to say thank you for people who are listening to us. The topic that we're talking about, history today, is for everyone and why it's important. And so here's what's going to happen, so everyone that's watching with us can know exactly what's going to go on. Each one of our panelists is going to have a few minutes to tell what history means to them and why it's important to them and how can we learn from it. And then we'll go to each one of the panelists and they'll all have a chance to speak that. What I'm going to ask each of them to do is explain who they are, what they do, a little bit about themselves, and then the history question that we imposed to them prior to our meeting today. After that's done, we're going to all come back together and they're going to have an opportunity to speak in a round circle, or in this case, a square circle, the four corners, and we'll have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what they believe and dig into it. And as I stated before, this is not a who's right and wrong. This is just about history and why it's important. Okay? With that being said, we're going to start off. Who want to go first? Any volunteers? Okay, so there we go. We're going to go. Great. We're going to go with Melinda McNeil first, and she's going to have her opportunity. We're going to get her 5 to 7 minutes, and each one of the panelists will have 5 to 7 minutes to explain a little bit about history to them and why it's important and what's the successes that we can learn by looking back through it. And with that, Melinda, it is yours.
Well, hello, everybody. I come to you today as an educator of 25 years. I've seen a lot of, young people who either really don't like history or really do like history. And growing up, I didn't really love history. And I think that's just because I didn't like to memorize dates and names, and I wasn't really great at that. But when I discovered, I think it was in college, I realized that I really enjoy historical fiction. So I love the stories. I love to hear about the everyday practical things that happened in people's lives that, brought them to where they are. So as an adult, I started reading some historical fiction. Of course, I grew up in Little House on the Prairie, which I loved that, and learning how they lived in that time period. And which brings me to the importance, I think, that that history is an important part of our life, because we can study historical figures. Recently, I've heard some things about Benjamin Franklin that I did not know, and all the many, many things he invented and systems that he created. We might not have post office system if it wasn't for him, and our lighting might be different if it wasn't for him. The electrical devices we have. There's other people in history that invented other technologies, and I just think that we don't really realize how much they've inspired the people that are inventors, the innovative people, the people that bring new technologies into our lives. I work with a company that the inventor was inspired by Thomas Edison as a young boy, and he started experimenting with light and light waves and created a new technology. I also think that it's good for character building, for people to learn about the historical figures and the lessons they learned and hear their stories. So many people nowadays, they don't have maybe the resilience or the stamina that some of the people in history had. So I really think it's important for young people to hear those stories. And then now, being an entrepreneur, I hear stories about sports athletes, that in all the stories they have about their perseverance and overcoming fear, and learning to perform well and having that resilience that they needed. And so many people, even people that are learning wealth thinking, they study these people in history to find out, what did they do to overcome their obstacles. So if anyone's out there and they're thinking about doing something, but they're not sure, I definitely would recommend diving into learning some lessons from the historical figures in our country that created and innovated and invented all the things that we're enjoying today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melinda. Wow, thank you so much. Hey, we do have hand claps. I almost want to bring some hand claps on there, but thank you so much, Melinda, for that. Hey, there we go. Outstanding. Thank you, Melinda. Folks, I tell you, history is very important, and it's so many things. And Melinda said that she's a entrepreneur, and I've known her for a while, and I know that she's loved education and all the things. And she mentioned some great things about Thomas Edison and Benjamin Franklin that you might want to go back and find out about some of the things here that they've done in the past and how it affects the things that we do right now. All right, let's bring our next guest up. Anybody else want to volunteer first? Oh, this is just like in the military. Never volunteer, right? Anyone want to go first? Okay, so with that being said, we're going to go with Elgrish. Elgrish Williams, you're next up. Thank you for volunteering, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember those days. You volunteer by not volunteering, voluntold. Again, good afternoon, Algrish Williams, founder of Williams Leadership, Williams Education Foundation, and best-selling author of. Matter of fact, this week is probably a great week for me as I've published my third book this week called "Lead with Integrity in a Distracted World." Audio must match the video. But as we think about that, and then looking at history and even why I even write certain things to talk about leadership, and why, in fact, and I love hearing Kat's story and a little bit from Melinda. And as I look at the educator piece, I believe that when we think about where we're going tomorrow, if we have not paid close attention to what we have seen in yesterdays and the days before that, we cannot truly design a path forward, because history repeats itself. And when it repeats itself and we have no knowledge of what really transpired prior to, we don't have a way of clearing a path forward, especially when I think about our young adults and where we want to go, looking at the Great Depression, looking at where we are today, looking at the economy. How can we, skip, not necessarily skip, but how can we avoid putting ourselves back in a situation where society does not have opportunities, it does not have jobs because the economy crashes or something to that nature. But being an immigrant from the islands, one of the things I love about history now that I didn't like when I was young growing up in school, I always thought civics and history was absolutely boring. It didn't hit home for me because it wasn't teaching me anything about what was related to me. It was just what was taught was what was in the books, but what was in the books wasn't necessarily for everyone. In today's society, we can't necessarily say that, because we have the Geminis, the Chat GPT, the Claude, and all these other ways of learning about me, my identity, where I come from, where my lineage come from. And I think about the little island of Jamaica, probably, not probably, these one of the smallest islands that have the greatest impact across the world. When you think about reggae music, for instance, Bob Marley started a movement in Jamaica that cascade across the world. And as a result of Bob Marley's sounds, you hear so many musicians today that have been influenced by that small island's start to fight for revolution through music. And so I'm just excited about having the opportunity to study the things that's interesting to me. I'm not going to say I love all of history, but I certainly want to understand the parts of history that help me grow, help my family grow, help my community grow, and more importantly, set a positive future forward so that we don't make mistakes that can be catastrophic to our community, our country, and the world as a whole.
All right, thank you so much, Elvis. We appreciate it. Hey, you didn't have to even say it this time. The hand claps came on. Outstanding. Well, thank you so much, Elvis. Really appreciate learning something. That's the thing about history, right? History has a little bit about everyone. Sometimes we put it in our own corner, and then there's a whole world of information. And with AI and the internet, you can find out things now that you didn't know. But I don't say that you trust everything that comes over on the internet, right? You have to read. You still have to read and do those basic things to really understand and study, because there is so much information, which is good. And at the same time, if you really want to know history and you dive in, you really have to dig into it. So thank Algrish for your comments. And as I stated before, when we do our little roundtable at the end, we'll go dig a little bit more into things there and find out a little bit more. So thank you, Elgish. I appreciate it. All right, so we have 2 volunteers left. Which one of you volunteers want to go first? All right, hey, we got a hand raised there. Miss Demaris Robinson. Thank you, Miss D.
Hi, everybody. So, yes, I am Miss D, and my education background is in psychology, child development, and mentoring. I'm currently a private tutor and a mentor, as well as the director of the K-5 curriculum development for ANHSCA. So when I was in public school, like Melinda, I did not really enjoy it because it was a lot of fact-based dates memorization, and I just wasn't really great at that. And it didn't help that the instructor was never really engaging. So yeah, it didn't, as I grew older, I gained some more freedom in my education, and I've slowly come across different histories that piqued my interest. So for instance, as I got in my later high school years, I became more interested in the Holocaust. And when I got to college and I did my degree in psychology, learning about the first few studies that took place that really shaped how we look at mental health now was really, really interesting. And it also showed me that if something happens in history, it takes a long time for those thoughts and behaviors to change, because once something is put into place, then people tend to adopt that into the way they live. So I believe history is very, very important for students and for everybody to keep their knowledge up on, because like we all say, if you don't learn history, you will repeat it. And that is to be seen in all aspects, all corners. And for students coming up in public schools and, just public schools, whatever, it's very important because it allows them to look at different perspectives of how civilizations thought decades before they were even born and compare that to now. I see that there's a lack of reading ability or want to read. So it's a little scary now seeing that if we're not reading, then we're definitely not reading the history books, and we're not learning those histories. So if we're not learning those histories, then we're always going to think what we're experiencing is new when it most likely is not new. And we have millions of books, texts, scrolls that we can learn from so that we can make better decisions for the future.
All right, thank you so much, Demaris. I thank you so much for that. Wow. So we're getting a chance to hear from everyone about the different things that helps people out and give them a chance to learn. And wow, interests in family, history and education, just so much. History has so much to do, and it is very important. And like I said, we're going to get a chance to in a few minutes at our ending there for the round table. All right, last one, our last volunteer for the day. Do we have one more volunteer? All right, I guess we do. Miss Catherine Knapp.
Thank you, Mr. Al. I'm Catherine Knapp. I'm currently a franchise consultant, and I own business networking groups. I got into that after years and years of working in big corporate world. And so today it's very important to me to help people be entrepreneurial if that's what they want to do. And history to me is very important as well. I'm a faith-based person. I know that not everybody might believe the same way as me, but a couple of years ago, I started listening to the chronological Bible. So first thing every morning, I'm going through those first whatever is next in the chronological Bible, and I'm listening. And while I always loved stories, I always loved history, not all the dates like what everybody else has said, but the story of it, the lessons of it. As I listened to scripture from beginning to end, I hear those stories that roll through 6,000 years worth of history. And guess what? We repeat the same things over and over again. So history is important because if, as Aldrich said, if you don't learn it, you're going to repeat the same mistakes over. And some of the things that I think are important about history is that it does tell us what people chose and what were the consequences of those choices. What were the values that shaped those choices? And did they learn something or not? And if we listen to Old Testament history, generation after generation, you have somebody who was chosen, somebody who was an all-star, and then all of a sudden their children really mess up. And why? Because they did not choose to put in the same values and beliefs and structure into those people as they did for themselves. So over generation, we don't instill the things that we think are important, and the next generation doesn't pick it up because they think that it's not a big deal. It wasn't made a big deal to them, so they don't buy into it. So in today's world, we see some of the same kind of mistakes being made over and over again, and people discounting history. I had a conversation yesterday with a young man who was talking about videos and reels. And I do know that a lot of younger people today get their history from these short little 30-second reels. And if that's the context of how we view history, we're missing out a whole lot. So I absolutely believe that generation to generation, we have a responsibility of honoring what is true and factual about history, learning from it, sharing what we understand to be important and the purpose that history teaches us, and sharing that to the next generation so that they can take ownership of it as well and learn from that and go forward in a very positive way so that they're shaping history or shaping the future in the way they wanted to see it, and not necessarily repeat the same mistakes over and over. So that's what it means to me. I think we can learn from history very actively.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much. And wow, I love that slide too. Very, very nice. Very, very nice. And like Catherine said, using scripture, and not everyone believes in God the same way or the same God, but history is history. And what we've learned in the past is that history to me is like a mirror. You can look in it and you can see it or you can deny it. But it's factual. The mirror is only going to reflect what you see. But if you look at it and then look away from it and walk away from it, you'll forget what you look like. And if you come back years again and you look different, you can't see that same person that you used to see when you were 16 and now when you're 45 and when you're 75 because you're forgetting it, right? But if you stay in that mirror and you look back, some people always say, and you may have heard this, I wish I had that 2020 vision back then, right? If I only knew what I knew now, right, I would have done this. Well, if you study history, you can do a lot with history. You can learn where to go and where not to go. You can learn what roads to travel, what roads not to travel. You can learn why and why not to do things. For instance, wars. We know that war doesn't settle anything too much, right? Sometimes you capture this and you capture that. But in the end, it's always somebody that is bitter. Someone is always saddened from it, right? And there's many reasons that we do different things. But, and you don't want to have to go to war unless it's absolutely necessary, right? So we do different things for different reasons. But history teaches us all. And the importance of history, to me, is that it's factual. Now, that's the reason why you need to know history. Because if you don't know it, someone can change it. It may not be true what you're seeing. And you can go on believing anything, right? So we don't want to do that. It's important that you document it and say why. So for instance, if I was to ask each one of our guests about their family, they should know something about it, right? But if they know something and they don't pass it on to their next generation, they will forget and they can believe anything that anyone says. So it's important to document history so that it is true and factual, right? It's
Yes.
true and factual. All right, let's bring all of our guests to the stage there, and we're gonna have a round circle, and I'm gonna kind of shoot some questions out there to everyone, and I'll call on you first, and then at the end, I'm going to just kind of let you guys jump in there, but we want to make sure that everybody can hear each other first, and so I'm just going to throw some things out there to you guys first. Okay, let's start with the oldest person on there. That'll be me, Al. No, just kidding. Anyway, so listen. My question is to Algers. Algers, you said that you came from Jamaica. Tell me about the history of Jamaica in just a 2-minute clip from what you have, from what you know.
Well, interestingly enough, a lot of people did not know that Jamaica was more of a Spanish and indigenous type country prior to it becoming what it is today. Jamaica, I think, is what the original name was still the same Jamaica, but over time, going through the slave trade and so forth, when Africans were brought in, mainly the west coast, I think folks from the west coast of Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, and all those Ivory Coast type people were shipped into Jamaica. But the good thing about what transpired as Jamaica got a little bit more into history, and even before that, railroad, I believe railroad was started in Jamaica, if I'm not mistaken. As you can tell, I'm not a great historian, but I believe that the railroad system itself was started in Jamaica. But our Maroons in Jamaica fought the British colony to really essentially force them to give us our freedom. And without those Maroons, we would not have had a free nation since 1962. So, knowing that history and understanding it, for people like me that left the island to come here, I have a greater understanding of who I am in terms of myself, in self-image, because our Jamaican culture was not in bondage or slavery for as long of time as you would have seen it here in the United States. And so there's some differentials between how we operate versus how you will see individuals within the United States operate. But nonetheless, we've had our spoils, and from that, we've learned to take freedom, share that knowledge with other countries for them to do the same thing.
All right, thank you. All right, this one is for Catherine Knapp, I'm sorry. Catherine Knapp, this one is for you.
Sure.
Tell us about the state that you're from and a little bit about the history there.
Well, I'm originally from Mississippi. And, in the United States, Mississippi is always considered near the bottom of the totem pole. And, but it's lots of agriculture, lots of really very accomplished people, artists, sports, musicians, authors, a lot of really great people, surprising people come out of Mississippi. I think the cotton gin was invented in Mississippi. So a lot of really tremendous things. It's certainly an interesting state, and I live right above it now in Memphis, Tennessee. And so when thinking about how people perceive each other across the United States, they always put Mississippi or even West Tennessee kind of at the bottom of the heap. But that's okay, because we can always surprise people. But you find lots of forest land, lots of agriculture, lots of mosquitoes, and a lot of really, really good people. And somebody was, the news stuff being in the news right now about the, just in the last few days about KKK and things like that. And in my history, I never saw that. In all my years, I never saw that. There were a couple of people where I might have suspected they might have had like a robe in the closet, but by and large, that was something I saw on media. And I'm over 50 years old, even though I tell my nieces and nephews that I'm 23. But
That's
my
right.
experience was never that. But the country at large believes that of Mississippi, that's like essential to who Mississippi is, but it's not. If it was before, it was for a limited time. And I believe history that it was before, but it's not today. And because I've never experienced it. So, and so I don't know what to say about that, except that history is partly perception, but perception isn't truth. Perception is just how we choose to perceive things, and how we choose to perceive things is a choice. And so if we want to know what truth is, we're going to take the time and discipline to dig through and test what we hear, what we read, to make sure it's really true. And then we're going to go after the honest truth so that we can make well-informed and wise decisions.
Outstanding, Catherine. Absolutely. I have a lot of family members in Mississippi, and it often gets a bad rap, and so does Tennessee. But I can tell you for certainly my family there that lives there, Tennessee, well, actually, go back to Mississippi, has some of the most educated people there is in the country that comes out of Mississippi, and I did not know that. And so sometimes you hear things and you don't hear the whole truth. You only hear one section of things, and that's why it's important to learn to read and to know history. There's a lot of great things. Of course, if we ask some things that happen, of course, we don't want to not acknowledge that it didn't happen, but.
Sure.
That's a good thing that we learn from history is what it was and what it is now, and how do you avoid those mistakes in the future. So outstanding, Catherine. Thank you so much. All right, Miss D, tell us something about where you're from, and I believe you're from Texas area.
Yes, I'm from Texas. I was born in El Paso, Texas, which is very desert-like. And then when I was 7, I moved here to Austin, Texas. Well, specifically Pflugerville, Texas, which was founded by Germans. But my experience here has been pretty good. I've grown up in the suburbs, so it's been pretty mild compared to what the general, what the country generally thinks of Texas is, especially also countries what they think about Texas. So usually people who are not from here think that we all ride horses and that we only, there's not much civilization here, or not civilization, maybe it's just like farmland. But like I always tell people, no, it's pretty normal. Like we have normal houses and stuff. So, but that's not to say that there are people here that do ride horses still to maybe the grocery store or whatever. This used to be a farmland here where I live. And it is very hot here, so it can be very desert-like. So I mean, their views of Texas are not completely wrong, but it's not completely how they think. So like I said, I grew up in the suburbs, and so it was pretty chill, honestly. There's not much else I could say. We did the rodeo growing up. That's pretty Texan. Barbecue is pretty big here. So I would say a lot of the stereotypes are I would say they get a good green check mark. Yeah, those exist. But yeah, like it's everyone here in my area is pretty diverse here. I know Texas also gets a rep of being racist at times, but I've never really experienced that. But I do know it exists. Thankfully, I haven't really experienced it. And yeah, like I said, it's very diverse. Everyone here is hospitable. That Southern hospitality is very real here, which I really enjoy. Because I have traveled to other states, especially in the Northeast and Maryland, and it was vastly different there. So I definitely missed Texas when I was living there for a brief period. So that's my history. My parents came here to Texas primarily because my dad was in the military. He grew up born in Alabama, grew up in Michigan. Mom was from Panama. She immigrated here when I think she was 13 or so. So my aside from just living in Texas, I do have a lot of background in the Latino or Latina community, as well as um, some roots in Michigan.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Damaris, for your background on that. And I think you said Pflugerville, right? Is that correct?
Yes,
Pflugerville. All
Pflugerville.
right. So for you folks that are my age, you probably remember the show Green Acres, and they used to be it's called Hooterville, and so I'm thinking Hooterville that actually exists, but Pflugerville. Okay, that's outstanding. All right, let's go on to our next one there, and from the great state of Michigan, I believe. I will say the great state because I'm also from Michigan. Melinda, tell us a little bit about history from your state.
Well, I can tell you from my experience. So my grandparents came over from Poland, and they lived in Port Huron, where I'm from, and like by the water on the east side of. That's not where I grew up, but that's the area I live right now. And they had a couple kids here, and then they went up to the Thumb area and bought a farm at a pretty young age. I think they were under 20 years old, and they bought a farm, started a farm. I had 15 children. So I came from a farming family, and I do still love to garden, although I just do it kind of in boxes, like with like little garden boxes, not a full-blown farm or anything. I do have a dream of having a working farm someday. So we have a lot of farming in this area of Michigan. And then we also have the Great Lakes, which are pretty cool because we have a lot of lighthouses, and we have a lot of shipwreck stories of history and different. If you travel around Michigan and stop at some museums, you'll hear stories of shipwrecks. And we also have a lot of industry of the car industry down in Detroit. And so a lot of people were, taught to, be factory workers in some areas of Michigan. But I feel like on the west side, there tends to be a lot more just openness and innovation, like over by Grand Rapids area. I enjoy the forest areas of Michigan, going up north to the lakes, and then even in the winter we have a lot of winter sports here. So we have all 4 seasons, which I love because then you don't get bored with the same weather all the time. So I guess that's been my experience with Michigan.
All right, great, thank you. So I'm also from Michigan. I'll share a little bit and I'm actually from the west side of Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is it was known at that time as the furniture capital of the world. I mean, 75% of all the home furniture and office furniture came out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Even the president's desk and all those things that was made back in history came out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, either from a place called Herman Miller, Hayworth, or Steelcase. And they made all the furniture in the world. Grand Rapids was also known as one of the first major cities, if not the first major city in the United States, that put fluorine in the water so people's teeth could be much better. And people didn't know that. So, yeah, that was some of the things that happened there. Also, one of the great things about Michigan that people did not know, and you can check this out in history, people always wonder why does Michigan and Ohio have such a great rivalry? Well, it's an actual true story. They actually had a war between Michigan and Ohio, and it was over Toledo, if you can believe that. Most people would not believe that now, but yes, it was over Toledo, Ohio. It's Toledo, Ohio right now. But Michigan had a war with Ohio, and they were not only did they take Toledo, but they were taking it all the way down to the center part of Ohio. And the federal government had to jump in and say, hey, cut it out, you two. Stop fighting over this. And they wanted the waterways that went from Toledo that goes up through New York and out through the main ocean of Atlantic. And so during the wartime, the federal government had to jump in between those two. Now, the British owned, this was the last stronghold in the United States as well. People didn't know that. There's a place called Drummond Island, the furthest east that you can go in Michigan, that is a little island. And the British had that little island, and they were kicked off of that little island as well. And so what the government decided to do was, you know what, Michigan, we're going to give you the Upper Peninsula. That's what they call it back then. It was a separate area. So you always see people go like this in Michigan. People know what that is, depending on what side it is there. Anyway, that means the thumb and then the Upper Peninsula, right? And so the United States said, you know what? The federal government said, we're going to give you the UP and everything that goes up there, and we're going to give Ohio to Toledo. And so they settled the fight between that during that time. So people didn't know that that actually happened at that time. So it's real history. You can look it up and find out what was going on during that time. And by the way, University of Michigan is the winningest football team ever in college football. It would take the rest of the teams another 50 years to even catch up with the University of Michigan. And why is that? That's just because we're good. Also, President Gerald Ford graduated from there, and he graduated from my old high school, South High School in Grand Rapids too. So we have some great things going on there. So you learn a little bit of history there. Everything that I just said, go and verify for yourself. Don't just take our word of mouth for it. Go and check it out. All right, here's our hot topic. Okay, so we're gonna go around and around, and anybody can jump in, or you all can jump in at any time. Here we go. Our kids should know history because anybody jump in.
To learn
Repeat
from
that question
it.
again.
There we go. All right, here we go. So I'm going to go real quick. I'm going to go with Elgrish first and then Catherine. Our kids should know history because what, Elgrish?
Well, if you don't know where you came from, you can't know where you're going. So it's important to understand your background so you can actually pave a way to move forward.
Great. Catherine, what do you say?
What worked, what didn't work, why, what were the consequences of things, what to stay away from. There's a lot of things that can be learned from history.
All right. This is for Miss D and Melinda. You two tackle this one here. All right. On this particular question, I want you to answer this here. All right. So, what success can our folks learn from history? Miss D.
So, what success can people learn from history?
That's
They
correct.
can learn. They can learn the ways of, for instance, wars. They can see their tactics and their the way of living of the people who are not fighting the war, and they can take those tactics and develop them for the times that they're living in. Just as an
Okay.
example.
Great. Melinda, what can our kids learn about that history and be successful, turn it into success?
I believe that being inspired by historical figures and the ways that they became successful and following that pattern. For example, having resilience, having good character. I think of George Washington, how he didn't really want to be a leader, but because people trusted him and they lifted him up. So humility, all the different, list of character traits that people in history who've been successful have, and then they could mirror that and copy that and put that into their own life to be successful.
Okay, great, great, great. It's important. This goes for Elgrish and Catherine. And so we're going to go with Elgrish first and then Catherine. Here we go. Now, I got to remember, I want to remind our audience, they do not know what I'm going to ask them. This is not preset, so this is actually live. And so they did not practice this. They don't know what I'm going to ask them, and I don't know what I'm going to ask them either. It's like, okay, here we go. Elgrish, here's one for you. Is the United States the largest, is America the largest continent on the earth?
Now you know good and well that's a loaded question there, Mr. Al.
I'm
You
just
could put
asking.
United States and Europe inside of the continent of Africa probably 2 times over. The United States is definitely not the largest continent.
What's the largest continent?
Africa is the largest.
Africa is the largest. But on the
continent
map,
by
you're going
far.
to see on a global map, you'll see it as one of the smallest continents. All right, here we go. Now, these are not trick questions. I already told them, I promised them that I wouldn't ask trick questions. And so it's a little tricky there, but it's not trick questions. All right, Catherine, who makes the best pasta in the whole world?
My understanding is it's the Italians. They have cleaner ingredients, and so people can eat pasta all day long and all year long without gaining all the same sort of weight and stuff that we do in the United States. So they have cleaner healthier pasta than we do.
Right. And so now, some folks may say, Al, what is the question that has to do with history? Because it's important. The small things, sometimes, you know what, for all you guys that are married out there, husband and wives that are married out there, remember you just so in love when you first got married and all those things like that, but you didn't check into the history of that spouse. Now, here's the funny part. Here, look at everybody's gonna laugh right now, right? Okay. Some spouses says, hey, I don't mind you if you brush your teeth over the sink. And then there's some people that brush theirs over the sink where you wash dishes, and they be like, no, don't do that, right? Or some people like the tissue that's rolled over the top and some under the bottom, and they like, what are you doing? You're supposed to roll it from under the bottom, right? So history is
Over the
learning
top.
something about that family. All right. Here's one for Miss D. Here you go, Miss D. You don't know I'm going to ask you this. Why is it important that we know all our local elections?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Say again?
Can you repeat the question?
All right, here we go. That was a tricky question right there. Why is it important that we should know all of our officials in our local elections?
Why should we know all the officials in our local elections? So we know who is going to be in power and who's going to be making the decisions for where you live. Because if you don't, then you're going to be wondering why you're paying certain taxes, why this building is being built, and why your water source is not where it needs to be.
Now, let me ask you something. This is the follow up to that. What does that have to do with history?
It has a lot to do with history because history is not always happens right then and there. So like for instance, if a decision is made, it might take 5 years before the results of that decision to be seen. So if you don't look back to see why certain things are going on, like for rec centers, how schools are, how schools are being run, the curriculum. You have to look backwards, like 5 years ago, about what decisions were being made for you to understand.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. This one is for Melinda. I heard it that she wanted to be a farmer. She wanted to have horses. She lived in the great city there of Port Huron, where Benjamin Franklin, I believe, was at, and all those other things that happened in that.
Thomas
that
Edison.
area.
Th-
Thomas
Thomas
Edison.
Edison. Yep.
Thomas Edison. So people don't know that, right? That was right there in Michigan, Thomas Edison, right? Okay, so Melinda, somebody's going to say, what does it have to do with history? But you'll be able to share. Why is it important that we know how to farm?
Well, it's funny because in some schools, you'll ask students, where does our food come from? And they will say grocery stores because they don't know that their food is grown from plants. And so I really always believe that people should know how to grow food. Even if they don't grow all the food on their own, they should know how to, because if they ever needed to, then they would be able to. So I grow things like raspberry bushes. I have some raspberry bushes. I grow asparagus, and those all come back every year. So you don't have to replant them, just so you have some food. We definitely are disconnected from where our food comes from. And a lot of people don't, they're not even aware of like the quality of the food. Definitely, we should not be eating processed foods. It's not good for our food.
Let me ask you this, Melinda. Why is that question that I ask you? What does that have to do with history?
Well, that's how people would always make, they would grow their own food, like until they started with factories. I mean, I remember my aunts were so excited that they didn't have to go in the field and pick stones out and grow their own food. When canned food was invented, they were like, I'm going to buy that stuff. It's a lot easier. But definitely before all the innovation and inventions of factories and all of that, that's just how people got their food. They grew it themselves.
Absolutely. And it's kind of amazing that you would think that kids say, where do you get greens from? Or where do you get beans or potatoes from? And they're like, we'll just go to the store, pick it up, or we're going to McDonald's. But if they wasn't there, where do you get it from? And to our generation, or younger generation, maybe too, that it just doesn't make any sense, right? We would never think that in a million years. So put it this way: my dad was born in 1921. So during his time, so in 1921, he saw the airplane, he saw the radio, he saw the cars, he saw the trains, all these different things that happened. And it's like just blown his mind. Even using a microwave, we're going to typewriter to a computer, right? He died when he was 95 years old, a day before his 95th birthday. But in that 95 years, he saw so much happen. And it took almost, what, 9 generations for those things to occur. We're seeing 9 generations of things happening in 6 months. So things are happening, and we ask our kids, hey, where do you get soda pop from? And they're like, just go to the store and just get a soda. Where's it made in a factory, right? All right, so this question is for Eldridge. Eldridge, when you teach history to someone, to your family member, where do you start?
Well, I start with my grandfather, my great grandfather, because that's as far back as I know. And I think it might have been Kath that talked about earlier. It might have been Melinda. Is for me, if I really don't know a lot of my family, and I wish I did, because there's things that would be helpful for me to understand health issues that may arise down the line, or basic genetic things that would happen. But I started with my great grandfather and my grandfather, because that's as far back as I knew.
Outstanding. Same question, Catherine. Where do you start with history when you go to your family and you teach?
In regards to family history, I started using Ancestry a few years ago. I don't do the DNA stuff, but I've been able to trace back a little bit to the 1700s for one or two lines of great grandparents and whatnot. But some sides of the family, I can't get back very far, because I can't tell where they came into the country. And as near as I can tell, one branch came in by way of indentured servitude. And so that was pretty washed down, not much details. But I have some stories from my granddad of his upbringing and his grandparents. I have some stories from my great grandmother whose husband got run over by a train. Lesson: don't walk drunk by a railroad track.
Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah, so she had to raise 13 kids, and it was suggested to her to join the greatest profession, the oldest profession, and she did not. Oh, wow. She chose to establish a way to feed people at a man camp, a logging camp. And then she turned it into a boarding house situation in Jackson. So I got to see entrepreneurship as a young child and the situation she had created. So those are the kind of stories that I'll tell. Some of it's big question marks. Some of it is lessons learned, but all of it is something we can learn from going forward.
Outstanding. Thank you, Catherine. All right, same question for you, Miss D. Where do you start when you teach about history in your family?
So I'm still pretty on the younger side, that I'm still being taught. So I don't really teach a whole lot about the history, other than because when I was old enough to remember, I did not grow up with my grandparents. They had passed already. So all I really have are my parents who taught us about how their parents were and their brothers and sisters. So unfortunately for me, I'm still learning about a lot of the histories. I just have to talk more with the older adults in my family too.
Oh, wow. So did you guys hear that out there in the world? She says she's still on the younger side. She has her parent to go to. This is a great time to document, Damaris, to learn from your parents and all you guys that are out there who
and the grandparents and the great grands that are still around.
There you go. Who have their parents and their great parents. Talk to them now so that you'll know your history as much as you can. Now, some of them are not going to tell you the truth. You're going to have to dig deep to find out everything. They're going to tell you those big stories that, they caught the biggest fish and whatever, So you're going to have to dig in deep to find out. But talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents. aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews, all those folks who are still alive. That's how the information used to pass down generations ago. All right, same question, Melinda.
Well, if I could take your question a little bit differently, because we homeschooled we have four children, and they're all almost adults now. My youngest is 17. And so this last 3 years for my high schooler, we did a program that was based off of kind of like the foundation of Thomas Jefferson education, leadership education. So he read books all the way back from till ancient history, and I'm so proud of him that he did this curriculum. And so my husband's a historian. He loves history. So, yep, he just went right through it with him all the way back from Gilgamesh, till to modern to modern history. And so I can't say that I was in every conversation or read every book that he read, but I'm super proud that he got a good foundation of history, and that he was also able to, integrate that with literature and some Bible. And so I feel like he's going to be able to speak on a lot of different topics. Even though he's a high schooler, I'm sure he didn't read every single page, every word, but he got a great overview. So I think that that's super important for every family to go through. And then I shared some of my history already with my family, farmers. My husband's family was Irish, and so I think they were horse thieves, maybe way back when, like in Ireland. So so we have a lot of interesting conversations about history, and my husband also really likes politics. So we have a lot of conversations, family events and things. So.
All right, thank you, Melinda. So listen, I want to thank all my panelists today. I want to thank Miss D, Miss Damaris Robinson, Melinda McNeil, Mr. Algrish Williams, and Catherine Knapp. What a beautiful host of panelists. And now, a lot of you may be listening and say, I didn't understand all the history there. I didn't understand. And you probably were looking for a regular history study there. This is history. And everyone see it. I believe it was Catherine said, and Melinda, that said that it's from your own prism sometimes. It's where you grow up and where you are at in life. So sometimes we only see things in that quadrant of which we're living in. But there's a whole world out there. And so I would ask you to really look around you and to see everything that there is. And one of the best things that Catherine said there, which I very much agree with, is that if your grandparents and your parents and your great-great-parents are alive, your uncles and aunts, get to know them so that you can know your history. Yeah, you can go to Ancestry.com and DNA 23andMe and all that other stuff. But there's nothing like sitting down and listening to stories from your family and going to where they are at. I have family right now that live on great land in Maryland and Virginia. Some of you guys may have heard of Sailor's Creek. If you haven't, go and read about it. And my family lives on that land till this day, where the Civil War was started and ended, And so you can learn about that. My family still live there to this day, and they were there even during that time. So history is really, really great. It may not be always pleasing. It may not be always what you want to hear, but it's facts. And I stated to you earlier, it's like looking in the mirror. You can see what was behind you and you can see you. But if you move away from it and you don't go back to it for many years, it changes, right? Because you don't look the same. But if you document, that's why it's important to learn to read and write, to know the truth. Tell the truth about things, because it comes back onto you too. Some folks like to lie about history and say, this really didn't happen or this didn't happen. Learn the truth because it can determine your road. It's like a compass. History is like a compass. I believe Elgrish said, if you don't know your history, you don't know where you're going. And it's like, well, what does that have to do with me now? Because you can avoid so many obstacles in life if you learn from history. As a nation, we're here in America, everyone that's listening to us right now, we can learn many things by looking at history. where we came from, where we are going. If we use those things that people have stated for us before, I'm telling you, we can learn so much more. If we learn history, our students, our children, they will learn so much more. So why don't we kill and steal, right? Because we know it's not right. Some people do it anyway and they try to get away from it. But let me tell you this, you cannot get away from doing wrong. If you do wrong, it will catch up to you, right? So history, you can't run from because it's just that. It is the fact. Some people will try to change it, but it always come back to reveal itself. Let me say that again. You can try to hide it, but it always come back to reveal itself. I'll take this for point in closing. If you go to the Middle East, and there was things that was covered up by many, many years of sand and dirt and all that, and you get those historians and all those archaeologists, and they dig it up, and they show these things, right? A mirror has a strange way of reflecting what it sees. Sometimes it needs to be just dusted off. If you dust it off, you can see the truth. And so I would say to our folks here that are listening to me today, don't wait till it get dusty to learn your history. Don't wait till it get dusty to learn your history. Learn now so that you can learn what roads not to take. Learn now so you know what roads not to take. And yes, I know this is a little different history class. So many of you thought that we were going to get right into the nuts and bolts and things, and we will down the line. You keep listening to our show, and you will find out that we will get deep into things. But sometimes I want you to know the lighter things of things, the lighter side of things. And what I said about just knowing about history, right? Why is it important for us to know history? It's so important that we know it because it has something to do with you. You want to know about your family traits? You want to know why your eyes are blue and why are they green and why are they brown? You want to know why years ago someone said, man, you look just like this person I knew. You have a twin out there somewhere. Well, you may have a sister or brother somewhere, right? I tell you this much. History is important because life is important. And if you want to know about the future, study your history. If you want to know about how to make it, study your history. Young people, and I'm going to close with this. Young people, you don't have to say, I wish, I would have, I could have, I should have. You want to know how to make it and be successful? Watch what those elder folks do around you to avoid. If I was still a young man, I wouldn't be ashamed to speak to the elders in the neighborhood. I wouldn't go out and buy that brand new car. I'd probably just buy something just to get around with and save my money and get that nice house and then get that older car. Many of you guys heard this, right? Why is all the older folks driving all these brand new cars? Because they learned to save when they were younger. They drove around, in my day, the Pinto and the Gremlin. Look it up, folks. You'll find out what that is, right? Some of you guys are laughing about that right now. The Pinto and the Gremlin, the little small Vega car. And yes, we had small cars like that, right? So anyway, I say that to say thank you again, guests. I appreciate it. And I hope this was lighthearted enough. We don't want to get too heavy today. There'll be periods of time where we get into it really deep. But today, I just wanted folks to know why history is important and to learn from your own perspective a little bit about history. On that, I'm going to give each one of my folks a 1-minute closing, and then we'll close out. I'm going to start with Miss D. Miss D, you have any last words that you would like to say?
Just that I really enjoyed everyone's perspective and the conversation as a whole. And I really have been enjoying all the educational symposiums, and I look forward to many, many more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Melinda McNeil, please.
Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it. I also enjoyed the conversation and the variety of experiences shared today. And I appreciate like I said, the invitation, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Miss Catherine McNabb.
Sure. Thank you for having me on here today. I really enjoyed it. And I would just encourage everybody to embrace history, learn from it, and learn the concepts of what history taught us so that we can be as wise as possible going forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Algish Williams.
Yes, certainly was a pleasure to be among such distinguished individuals today. One of the things I really want to share with the audience, especially our younger generation and families in general, is sit down for dinner, talk about your family, share recipes, and you would learn, those stories are at the dinner table. And I think as a country, we've gotten so busy that we forget to just sit down and have a meal together so that we could talk about what's going on in our lives, what happened yesterday, what happened a year ago, what happened 10 years ago, why we are the way we are today. Why is this country moving so fast that we don't have time to have those conversations so that we could truly understand our past history and be connected as families and continue to grow sustainably.
Thank you, Mr. Algish. And I thank my assistant, Miss Bianca Santos, in the background for helping put this together. She does such a wonderful job on that. So thank you, Bianca, in the background. Really appreciate that. And my last words before we close off, and after I say this, if my panelists could stand put after we go off the air for a few minutes, just wanted to thank you again personally after this here. So for the audience out there, you guys all know how I say this before we go, and I say it every time. Be nice, be kind, be gentle, have respect for yourself. If you don't have respect for yourself, no one else will have respect for you. Take care of your parents. Do the best that you can do. And that's all you can do is do the best that you can do. Be honest, be faithful, be cheerful. Look up, hold your head up, speak good words to folks. Take pride in yourself. Be honest with yourself. If you're not going to be honest with yourself, then no one else will believe you as well. Do what you know is right, not what you think is right. Do what you know is right. Do the unexpected. That means that when you're by yourself, have integrity, that you would do the same thing if people were watching, that you would do if they're not there. Have it in yourself, have pride in your country, maybe up and down sometime, but never give up on yourself and what you believe. Right? Almost sound like the song. Don't stop believing. Right? What a better word, what a better word to say than don't stop believing. Be good to you. Be good to the people that are around you. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thanks again for joining in our show. And we'll have another one coming up soon. If my guests can hold tight, we'll be there. Thank you.